Very shortly here. Okay, we are live. So good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 on February 8th, and this is the regular monthly meeting of Fitchburg Transportation and Transit Commission. For our order, we have quorum. Bill Horns is absent, excuse. Everyone else is here, and we do have a vacancy for our Public Works representative. So that will be remedied in the April appointments, after we have public officials. Next order of, so there's no members of the public here today. So the next order of business is approval of the minutes from January 11th. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Second. So Micah and Bill. Pretty unremarkable. Anybody see any things to update? Any discussion at all? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting them as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we have a draft agenda before you. Is there a motion to approve it, or does anybody want to make any changes?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Gabrielle and Micah. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Report from staff. We have Ross visiting from California tonight. It's only like.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hope you're having better.
I don't know, it's raining over there.
It's not raining now. I think so. Our flight got in right around noon today, and I think right before we touched down was the last of the rain. So I think we'll be good. But for my staff report, in January, I attended the Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization Technical Advisory Committee meeting. And there we approved the draft adjusted urban area boundary that the MPO will use for basically breaking down urban grant funding and rural grant funding. And we included our new South Stoner Prairie and Greenfield neighborhoods in that urban area. So that will be the major change in that affecting Fitchburg. Any questions on that?
Yes. This is not the MPO jurisdiction area, right?
That's correct. This is a subset of the MPO planning area.
Okay.
So the planning area includes, I'll say, most of Dane County, and the urban area just includes what you would consider actual urban areas. So it's probably about half of Fitchburg.
Yep. And all of Fitchburg is in the Dane County, in the MPO jurisdiction, right?
Correct.
So I would expect that Windsor would be sort of like us, that they have a bunch of rural area.
For Windsor?
The village of Windsor.
Yep. Yeah, they have, partially in the urban planning area and partially just in the regular planning area, yes.
So in terms
Questions
of,
on that?
yeah, in terms of the boundaries, you said that will allow us to be eligible for grant funding for in those regions. Is that the reason?
Urban versus rural grants.
Yeah.
Right. So there's STBG and other acronyms of grants with the urban designation, and you can only apply for those if you're within the urban area, and if you're in the rural area, you can only apply for the rural grants.
Got it.
So they became ineligible for the rural grants, although they're eligible for the urban rates in that particular neighborhood.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
You said South Stoner Prairie and Greenfield are now lumped in with the urban, even though neither one of them is really gonna have much movement for several years, right?
Yep. So this is a 10-year planning horizon. So this urban boundary can only be adjusted after a new census. So this is going off of the 2020 census, and then the next adjustment will be, we can only adjust again after the 2030 census. So we were taking that into account when deciding whether to add these areas or not add them.
All right.
Makes sense then.
Yeah, and so, and even though they won't be, nothing's gonna happen for several years, we could potentially make use of grants for planning the urbanization of those areas, right?
Exactly. And we're not planning, we are planning urban development in those areas. You know, obviously some of it will be a little more rural, but a lot of it will be more urbanized.
Great.
Okay,
So then, next topic, I've also been attending the North-South BRT design meetings. Those are bi-weekly. Basically, they are going to have to do another round of public involvement. They got some, both positive and negative feedback out of the last round, and they want to kind of go around to Fitchburg and, their internal communities again and share some more fleshed out concepts for the North-South BRT line. So that's the main update there.
have they decided center running and side running on Fish Hatchery Road yet?
So they have applied for the small starts grant using center running bus lanes on Fish Hatchery. So any adjustment to that would require an amendment to their grant funding, and moving it back to side running would negatively impact their scoring in the grant. So they are not interested in adjusting that.
How are they going to handle bikes?
They are going to utilize the off-street multi-use path that already exists on Fish Hatchery.
It only exists on one side. How will people get to destination
Yep.
sources on the other side?
Now, bicyclists and other pedestrians, if they're on the multi-use path, will have to cross at a crosswalk
And walk a half a block?
ride in traffic.
Okay, just an alert for you that Bike Fitchburg is probably going to oppose the South BRT.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Good to know.
Well, I'll bring up the same thing I brought up last time. If we're doing BRT, I think at some point in the future, it will be the case that we're gonna remove a lane of traffic. We should be considering that now. A lane of personal motor vehicle traffic.
Yeah. In other words, a road.
That's not. Yeah, that's not part of this, current BRT concept.
Well, it's not, but I'm suggesting that it.
What does it do about
Right.
the lack of right turn bays in the right-hand curb lane?
As far as car traffic goes, that will cause slightly longer delays in that right-hand lane. But that's a compromise that they and I am willing to make for better transit service.
I would pass along that it would be important for them to, during the next round of public information, to show why they're doing that. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
what are the operational benefits of center running that are causing them to take these hits in other areas?
Sure, I will pass that along and make sure that that's addressed at the Fitchburg meeting in particular.
Thank you.
And so I'm assuming that some of the reason for the center running is for consistency. I don't know that any other parts of the BRT routes are side running, are they? I've only seen center running so far.
Well, it'll be side running where there's no special lane. Okay, so for example, on Badger, there's no center median, so they're going to be side running. On Fish Hatchery south of McKee, South Fish Hatchery, they would be side running if there are stations there. So I don't think consistency is much, Ross can answer this, but I think it's operations at intersections, right? That cause them to prefer center running?
Yes, operations at intersections and with driveways, and those are the two main things. And it is easier to design for pedestrian safety using center running bus lanes, because then you have something extremely visible in the median that basically enhances your signal or RRFB or whatever you have for pedestrians crossing into that center station.
Notwithstanding the urban mythology of, how are we going to get out to the medians on the crosswalk?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Other questions or discussion?
Given the timeline, is it possible to do some improvements to the multi-use path on both sides of Fish Hatchery Road? Like add that to the CIP? I don't know what that would look like, but given the fact that those are supposed to be used more, I mean, is there something we can add to the CIP?
Yeah, things like closing the driveways and making more of the businesses use common driveways and putting a multi-use path on the east side for as much of it as possible.
I mean, timeline-wise, that is definitely a possibility to put that in the CIP.
And so you could do it, for example, north of Post Road, put a multi-use path in, and then south of Post Road require when the Bowman lands get developed in those three little houses, now only one, when that gets redeveloped, you require the developer to put in a multi-use path.
That certainly could be done. I will make a note of that here. Okay. Any other?
Yeah, I'm going to put BRT discussion for a future agenda item as well, because we're probably going farther afield on this than a staff report should.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you have?
The last thing is the intra-city transit study that closed on January. I put out the request for proposals for that study that closed on January 17th, and I received no proposals for that study. The Public Works Department also puts out a general request for qualifications for engineering consultants, and I am going to select 3 engineering consultants out of the 12 applications we received for that, and ask them to provide proposals for the intracity transit study.
Okay. Did you get any communication with respect to the first RFP about they thought that it wasn't enough money to do a decent job, or any other kind of feedback?
So the main feedback I got was that it was basically too small of a study to be worth them putting the time into the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that will be addressed. I can, make the proposal less burdensome. That's kind of my goal for asking for proposals from this new group. So
Sounds good.
So when you say it was too small, you mean the scope or the budget?
I didn't hear specifics, but I assume both.
Okay.
Ross, there was one other thing I asked you for in the staff report.
Oh, I'm sorry, question about the last.
Oh, yes.
I'm gonna stick with
Sorry.
for a minute. Go ahead, Gabriella.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
I remember talking a time ago, because this has been going on for so long, about potentially using that funding that we have as a matching for state DOT grant to do transit studies, rather than have it be the entire cost. Given the lack of proposals, is that something we can consider putting a pause on it so that we can look at what we could use it as a matching funds?
I mean, from a staff perspective, that's certainly a possibility if I kind of hear general agreement from the commission.
There's been no reaction so far, but I would be concerned. I know for state funding for operational support, we're not eligible because we get our service from Metro and they are eligible and get the state grants. So would the state consider that double dipping if we were to ask for that, or is there a separate pot of money for planning?
So I'd have to look into that further, but my thought is that this expands beyond just bus transit service.
Okay.
So I think we would be all right there, but I would have to look into that further.
Does the commission feel like this is a good use for us this time to look into the possibility of using it for match for state funding for a bigger study? Obviously.
How long would that delay the study?
How long would that study, Ross?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look at their
We're talking about like on the
grant application deadlines and award dates.
Or
and there's no way that this would be eligible for the Safe Streets for All design.
oh, that's a completely different thing. I don't know if we could pitch it as a safety initiative.
I mean, if we're talking about moving
Yeah.
public transit instead of behind the wheel of their own car.
There's another grant program called Reconnecting Communities, which I believe, and it's for very big ticket items like freeway removal, that is for communities that have been torn asunder by transportation projects. We are still depending only on you for grant prospect analysis. Is that right, Ross? We don't have?
Correct.
Okay. Well, those are some possibilities I think that you should look into if you feel that the ratio of probability of success and time involved is favorable.
Mm-hmm.
Your suggestion of asking the general engineering consultants to submit proposals is probably the one that will get us a result fastest.
That is correct.
And Ross, I did forwarded you an old email from one of our former transportation engineers.
Mhm.
He was referencing this study just in case, and I trust your assessment of what we should do. I just wanted to point it out, and I understand a delay would be unfortunate, but if we're getting a subpar result, I don't know, I just think it's better to wait, do something more robust rather than getting, but just put it out there, I trust it.
Mhm. Yep, and I'll discuss this internally with Tracy and Tim and possibly Chad as well. So, all right. Anything else on that?
I think just the last topic.
So, been getting a few questions about process to change speed limits on existing streets. It's obviously a big component of Vision Zero and Safe Streets for All and programs like that. Generally, if this is driven by resident complaints, we would go through our traffic management process and do a speed study and have neighborhood meetings, and then if what the neighborhood agrees is the best course of action, we would then lower the speed limit.
What if it was commission requested as part of overall Vision Zero action plan?
If it was part of a Vision Zero action plan, then we would likely already have some form of engineering study or statistical analysis or something like that, and we could simply change the speed limit via an ordinance update.
Okay, that helps me a little. I appreciate that update.
Mm-hmm.
This was a question.
Yeah.
All right.
And then, so any other questions on that? I've got one more thing.
Go for it.
So bike and the bike committee will be being upgraded to the bike and pedestrian committee, and they'll also be getting, I believe, 2 additional meetings per year, so they'll be at 8 meetings per year. And I will be attending those meetings as the Public Works contact. Phil Groupie will still be the staff contact for that committee, but I'll be attending to answer questions on Public Works projects.
So that's a new thing, that Public Works has a representative on that committee?
Yes. So I have attended bike committee meetings in the past if there's a agenda item that it's needed for, but now I'll just be attending all of their meetings. So.
All right.
If there's no questions on that, that's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you very much. On to number 6A, ordinance 2024-01. The very first ordinance of 2024, and we get it. That's cool. Let's start out with a motion to approve or recommend approval.
I'll move approval of ordinance 2024-0-01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill and Elizabeth. So Ross, your report.
Yeah, so basically the newly redesigned section of Lacey Road from Seminole Highway to Fitchburg Road was designed and constructed with a 35 mile per hour speed limit in mind. Basically that was not adopted into ordinance at any point before the project was constructed. So this is to clean up our ordinances to match the posted speed limit on that road.
And allow citations.
Correct.
Yep. So it's riveting reading if you're doing a lot of mapping of bike facilities and things, to read our ordinances, all the stretches of any street that doesn't have the default 25 urban or 50 mile per hour rural speed limit have to be enumerated. And so this is changing that. On the ordinance, the first change is to remove that stretch of Lacey Road from the 50-mile-an-hour section. And the second change extends the 35 miles an hour that currently exists east of the Badger State Trail all the way to Fitchburg Road. So, pretty good stuff. This is the kind of speed limit reductions and design changes that we're hoping for throughout the city. Unfortunately, they're really expensive, but any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending approval as drafted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? You got it. Ross? Okay, the next one is a couple of discussion items. The first one is this document that I found about 2 weeks ago. And it is about those 28 proven safety countermeasures that we talked about last month. But what it does is it arranges them in a 4-step hierarchy from the top priority, where you completely remove severe conflicts. For example, changing a road to put it on separating it so that it crosses a railroad tracks or a bike trail, putting it in a tunnel or a bridge so that there's no conflict. Reducing vehicle speeds is the second tier. Managing conflicts in time is basically all of those things that have to do with traffic signals. And then awareness and attentiveness. These are things like high visibility crosswalks, the retroreflective panels that you put on the signs, on the poles of stop signs and yield signs that are red or yellow respectively, those kinds of things. And they give you a lot of examples. And these are the kinds of things that Federal Highways is recommending that we use as our countermeasures when we identify a high injury network and undertake to improve intersections, either because there was a crash there or because it has characteristics of intersections or road stretches that have had crashes of the type that we want to have zero of. So did anybody else get a question? One of the discussion ideas I had was to just talk whether, for each one, whether it's applicable to Fitchburg or if we have any existing examples. But I would be happy to entertain any other kind of questions or discussions or format for talking about this.
I guess I had a question on, this is coming from the United States DOT. How do these safety countermeasures and their implementations compare with other parts of the world?
We're catching up.
Okay.
The famous Netherlands and Danish interventions that have made them bicycle meccas started with a Stop Killing Our Children campaign back in the 70s, I believe.
Yeah.
And so they've been working on it for many years, getting their mode share up to 2/3 or 3/4 bike trips. I think that one of these things, so first of all, there's new leadership at Federal Highways and they're pushing these kind of progressive ideas very hard, adopting Vision Zero and complete streets and so on. So I think what they're doing when they're providing these detailed recommendations is trying to debunk the idea that, well, we're not Copenhagen, so we can't do that stuff. And so they're recommending what people are calling Dutch intersections, protected intersections, as legitimate countermeasure. So I think that behind some other places, but this is a great step forward.
I guess my fear is that the intentions are great, but we're like pushing designs and or technology that are now potentially obsolete in areas like the Netherlands, et cetera. Like, you know, there's mention of the intelligent transportation systems, you know, so, and the intersection conflict warning system. There's one of the videos you can find on the Not Just Bikes channel. He talks about why the Dutch never have to wait to cross the street. As you approach the intersection on your bike and or on foot, it senses that you're coming, and if you currently have a red and there's no cross traffic, it just gives you the walk signal and you can go. And I don't know that any of that is in this document, but if parts of the world are doing that, everyone should be doing that. You know, we shouldn't be implementing 2005 technology when they're on 2023 technology.
I agree. I have a little experience with dealing with, conservative thinking in civil engineering. And I am grateful that we do not have too much of that at Fitchburg. But engineering is a very conservative profession, and when you put your stamp on a design, you're really assuming some liability, that the bridge will stay up or that no one will be killed at this intersection. And so it's important that we get these kinds of recommendations for more progressive designs in place so that we can start building them and approving them and building them here. Ross, do you have any feedback on Bill's question?
I think it's a great point, and it is also one of the points I kind of wanted to just remind everyone about with this document is that it basically happens that the tier 1, as you go through the tiers from tier 1 to tier 4, you go from most expensive to least expensive, unfortunately. And that concept of pedestrians or bikes getting detection for traffic signalized crossings is on the cheaper end of the things suggested in this document. So that would be a good concept to try to move forward with, I think.
Yeah, they have some of them in there that are specifically mentioned as low enough costs that could be applied universally, and all of them in here are being shown from, I'll say academic or safety studies. They're typically engineering safety studies that are proven effective. It's not just people
Exactly.
thinking that this could make things better. We deal all the time with public opinion that we want this kind of countermeasure because it's the thing we know about, instead of what the whole palette or what all the arrows in the quiver are.
And I appreciated that pretty much every page had information on here's a case study, and these are the positive changes that occurred after implementation.
As in terms of Ross's comment about cost, there was a proposal to do a protected intersection at Cyan and Sherrill Drive
Yes.
a couple of years back, and the council voted for it, and it failed due to budget.
Yep.
So I can't recall exactly how much the difference was. It was significant.
Like $100,000 or more.
Yeah, but it was a split. It was a split vote, and that was just an interesting data point. Was that the cost of doing that? And now they've with the intersection, and it's just interesting to look back on it and think about the fact that could have been something a little bit innovative. And I don't think there are. I think when we were talking about it before, I don't think there are a lot of protected intersections in Wisconsin. Like I think it might.
The only one I know about is the one in Madison, downtown somewhere.
Yeah.
They just installed one in Milwaukee that I read someplace. Anyway, yes, cost is an issue, and I think that's one of the things where we are going to emphasize, well, this is not the status quo, this is a new way of doing business. And we are assuming people will make mistakes instead of assuming people will all perfectly behave. And we are trying to have no crashes of these types. And therefore, now this is something the council will have to agree to, is that, you know, people's lives are valuable and we don't want even the minor injuries and the near misses, so.
And then once we put that intersection in, I mean, we're not gonna be replacing that for a very, very long time.
Yep.
So it's the other thing too about it, and I just think it's one of the things I argued was,
Yep.
if we don't do it now, we're not gonna do it for at least 20 years, maybe more.
I'm trying to remember why a roundabout was dismissed there, because I had thought that was a valid option.
I don't recall.
The corner of that building is canted to make room for the roundabout. You know, it's a cut-off corner, but that space was one of the things. So it could have been the cost of real estate, because they get an appraisal of the whole property and then they pay per square foot. And so that, if you have to buy a lot of property, then it can be, that can be more expensive than.
I had thought the roundabout was cheapest, than the standard signalized, and then the protected intersection.
I think you're right.
And I thought there was a reason given, but I don't recall what it was.
I don't remember ever discussing it as an option, to be honest, so I don't know if there must have
I
been.
think I still have that diagram with the three of them on my desktop.
Yeah. I don't remember why, yeah.
Ross, is it due to like traffic counts or something, or the disparity in traffic from one direction versus the other?
So
It predates you.
it does. What I have heard, and I would have to double check this to make sure, but I think that was voted on either A or B, you know, roundabout or signal by council. But I would have to go back and check on that to actually know that.
Voted on the design.
It'd be worth checking, but my recollection that it was, the choice was a protected intersection or a signalized intersection.
And the roundabout was,
Around.
there was a roundabout design, preliminary design done.
We have to go back to the YouTubes.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because I don't recall. It's been a while.
Well, did people discover any of these countermeasures particularly interesting, or want to have questions about them, or want to talk about them in Fitchburg? Some of them are easy, like we love roundabouts, although I had never seen one like this with the stop signs going in to get to the inner lane. And it would be very interesting to find out more about that kind of roundabout. Roundabouts in Wisconsin are designed by DOT certified roundabout designers, and so that's why they all look exactly the same.
Okay.
Wisconsin DOT, and I don't think that this is one of their designs.
No. I did notice that, so in Wisconsin, our standard roundabouts are, you have to, when you're crossing as a pedestrian, you have to zig and zag, because, you know, we're going perpendicular to the travel lane, which is good, but the fact that I think it's where the crosswalk is laid out. So within this document, you can see a sample from Minnesota on page 7 and a sample from Pennsylvania on page 11. And in both of those, it's a straight shot across the street. Ross, do you have any commentary on why we do it differently here?
What was the second page reference?
Page 7 and 11.
And they're not, for you, Steve, he's got
Oh, I'm
PDF
sorry.
page numbers,
It's the page numbers within as labeled in the document within.
Not the red page numbers in the
Right,
packet.
yeah.
I got that.
Yeah.
So that we actually made that comment on the Fitzrona and Lacey roundabout, and the response we got from the designer was, "This is the way that roundabouts are usually designed, with the kind of, you know, zigzag crossing." So that's the input I have there.
Crossing is perpendicular to each lane.
Yes.
And
Correct.
this page 7 Minnesota roundabout does not have the canted islands or as severely canted islands that direct any collisions into being more sideswiped that Wisconsin roundabouts have. So I think the fact that our lanes incoming and, so first of all, they have to get a certain distance from the roundabout to give motor vehicles a place to yield after the roundabout, but before their yield line. So that's what moves out. If you're going all the way around the roundabout, it's a long walk because the crosswalks are so far from the hub.
Right.
Then,
But it does minimize the crossing distance then.
Yep. But if you were removing snow with a Jeep with a plow, it would be nicer if they were straight.
Yeah.
But I can,
Well, it would also be nicer if you're like in a wheelchair or something too, you know?
no, I don't know so much that the angle, are you talking about the angle on the central island is?
Yeah, on a roundabout, it's not nearly as bad as a lot of our sidewalks where we have, you know, the kind of the corner and then we have the one diagonal. So if you want to go straight across the street, you have to go right, left,
Yeah.
left, right.
So the new design of the pedestrian island at the Badger and Lacey is one of these. You can see it's been the path has purposely been diverted north of Lacey 10 feet to the east, so that doesn't line up. And so as you're coming south, you have to turn, and that's intentional because you have to turn and face the traffic. You're
Right.
coming the other way, you turn this way, and you're facing the oncoming traffic. So that's intentional. It's traffic calming for pedestrians.
Right.
So I argued back at the design phase that it should be a raised crosswalk and that the motor vehicles on Lacey Road should be getting yield signs. But that did not fly, so we go down the curb ramps and go across at street level and there's no traffic calming. And I suggested that would not be a problem for motor vehicle throughput because right after that, they're going into a 15-mile-an-hour roundabout or else they're coming out of a 15-mile-an-hour roundabout. But those suggestions did not get taken, perhaps because it's not the DOT standard. So I said it's a conservative profession. Other comments on this document?
I didn't remember anything when we had the presentation, with the maps and the data that the rural areas were more of the, I guess, zones for what we would want to address. And that,
The rural areas had more stretches, the urban areas had more intersections.
intersections, okay.
And the kinds of things that you see in rural areas like cars overtaking bikes and hitting them and run off the road types of issues, in the urban areas, intersection crashes.
Just from looking at what we are capable of doing, the solutions for rural roads would be in the more columns, if I'm correct. So that's just something to think about as we're prioritizing.
Yeah.
If we're trying to find, I guess, value or bang for your buck or whatever you can.
I just read today another document that talks about the 28 proven safety countermeasures, but it only talks about a rural perspective. It's for people who are in small towns or, county roads. And there's a very different emphasis because, you're not going to have a diverging diamond interchange out in the town of Windsor. So, other observations or questions?
I guess I'm a fan of the, intelligent transportation system, the conflict warning system. I think we ought to be having, leading pedestrian intervals and dynamic no turn on red signs and, they're somewhat effective, but not as effective as they ought to be. But I like that, because like you said, Ross, it seems like that's on the lower end of the cost spectrum. It feels like a pretty good bang for your buck.
For those who are not aware, back when they were working on the belt line more severely, and we had, or the Verona Road project, and we had all of that traffic that was coming down McKee and Fish Hatchery to bypass the Verona Road. In 2013, the first year of the Verona Road project, they did some mitigations for spillover traffic. That's when we got the four-way stop at South Fish Hatchery and M. But another thing was that they installed intelligent traffic systems integrated into Madison's system and into the DOT operations system that covers the Beltline, from the Verona Road to McKee Road and from McKee Road up Fish Hatchery to the Beltline. So those intelligent traffic systems are there. And
Just a matter of programming them.
it's a matter of, do you want to do more with them? So one of the things, an idea I had was that the signs that we have on the Fish Hatchery Cap City Bridge that we can't use because they're in the right of way and they're not official signs, we should hook them up to the DOT system and make them official signs and let the DOT control them so that they, we used to have like library book sale today or vote
sure.
today,
Yep.
but we're not allowed to do that. But it could still say time to McKee Road, time to Verona Road, 7 minutes. Disabled vehicle ahead, that kind of thing. Because, Ross, do they have video cameras on those stretches as well that the DOT can monitor?
They do, yes.
So their operations center could actually see a disabled vehicle on McKee Road and light up that sign if it were done. But it's surprising how much things cost, I have to say. You'd think it would be just a matter of programming, and as a programmer, I know that can be a little hairy. Other observations?
Ross, can you talk about the use of rumble strips? I'm specifically thinking of within the buffer between bike lanes and car lanes on Lacey Road, for instance, that just opened up, where there are no rumble strips. Why should we or should we not use rumble strips, and in what instances?
So basically, rumble strips help account for distracted or unaware driving, where you're not aware you're crossing over either the bike buffer or the center line. So I think the statistic, yeah. So for center line rumble strips, you can see up to a 64% reduction in head-on fatal crashes on rural roads. So obviously it's extremely effective on two-lane rural roads. So it obviously makes drivers aware of where their car is on the road, even if they might not be paying quite close enough attention to the painted lines.
I know that there's a requirement for rumble strips to have gaps so that bicyclists can enter and leave the lane. And we don't want rumble strips where there are paved shoulders, making the rumble strips and making the paved shoulder too narrow. So, but a good example of a place where the longitudinal rumble strips would be great would be Seminole Highway, north of Lacey Road. So we have those wide bike lanes. We don't want drivers in those lanes, which are kind of tempting if somebody stopped up ahead to make a left turn into a driveway. So, but do you use rumble strips where there's curb and gutter, Ross?
Not generally. You certainly could, but where there's curb and gutter, the curb serves as a pretty good deterrent there as well. So,
Okay. Any other discussion on this item? I'm hoping we all had a chance to look at it just because later on when we get our high injury network, we'll want to be talking about what kinds of mitigations we want to put on an action plan so that the council can see what an action plan looks like.
Yeah. I had one more note on the removing severe conflicts. If you read it too quickly, you might gloss over the fact that some of these suggestions are very context dependent, right? So they talk about separating users traveling at different speeds. They also talk about removing fixed objects on the side of the road. And so if you, for instance, if you have a road and then street trees and then the pedestrians and bikers, you shouldn't be removing those trees,
No.
right? And every once in a while you'll see somebody post a photo on the internet where it shows the road, then the sidewalk, and then the guardrail that keeps the road, the cars from spilling over the cliff.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, some of these things you have to make sure you know where you are and what the appropriate remediation is.
Right, because the street trees do calm the traffic and they protect pedestrians. You'd rather have the driver and passenger of the car protected by their airbags and the frame of the vehicle, but the pedestrian is being protected by the tree.
Right.
And so you hate to use a tree, but you lose the tree than the person.
Those sorts of things are good for 25 miles per hour, not so good for 60 miles per hour.
Right. So, yeah. Sometimes rather than removing the trees to make a clear zone, it would be better to calm the traffic and post a lower limit.
Yes.
Yep. Other remarks, discussion? On a related note, I would ask that if the stuff that I've been teeing up for us to look at has seemed useful and a good direction to go in, or are we wasting our time? And also, do any of you have things that we should be including on the agenda like this to discuss? Because I don't want this to be like a Steve project.
Yeah. I think you're probably, by a good margin, the most knowledgeable on all things transportation amongst everyone on the commission, just because of your years of study, let's say. Ross notwithstanding. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've all probably got some ideas and we can suggest them to you and you can.
I mean, I think, like, this is good to learn about before, but I mean, like, it's really going to come to something when we get the actual
Right.
data.
When we get design, when it's time to.
Because then we're gonna have specific, I mean, these are a bunch of ideas, but once we have a specific intersection, we're going to be able to look at
And
it
a
and say
budget.
like.
Indeed. All right, well, then,
Do
I
we,
won't feel deterred.
no, do we have, can't remember, do we know timing of when we will get the high injury network information?
I thought we should have it by now, so I think that, Ross, is that a better staff function, or should I call Colleen at the MPO to inquire about that?
I can follow up with Colleen about that. I have actually a couple other items I need to email her about, so I'll include that.
Okay, and similar to that, Colleen had offered to speak to the council at a COW, and I don't know if I've mentioned this here, but I will mention it again if I have, that the Bear has suggested that we wait until after April and so that any new council members will also be informed, and we will likely have a new council president at that time. So, Jay Allen can't really schedule beyond his term. So, so you can, reminder that we'll want her to do that, but we're waiting till after April. Ross?
Yep.
All right, is that enough about that topic for today? Then the last discussion item is for Ross, this staff contact manual. At first I thought it was a manual about how to contact staff, but it's not. It's about commission and committee staff contacts, that is the professional member of Fitchburg's staff who is our interface with the rest of city government. So take it away, Ross.
Yeah, so like Steve said, this is really more of a guide for me than for the commission. But there is useful information in there for every commission and committee to know as well. But I think some of the main things, Steve already mentioned the title. That was one of the questions I got on this. And then Bill, I believe you had a question about or comment about the 3 minutes of testimony. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you don't generally see that enforced at meetings outside of plan and council, correct?
I haven't been paying attention closely enough to plan, but certainly at council, we enforce that fairly strictly, but at public TTC, we've had extended conversations with members of the community that have gone for, first of all, far more than 3 minutes, and secondly, it's a back and forth dialogue rather than just, 3 minutes of testimony and we move on.
Right.
It's a good question.
With respect, I think that it helps the presiding officer, me in our case, to not have things go on and on and on.
True.
All of us have seen certain citizens who really abuse their privilege of talking, and they want to interject during the discussion and so on. So I would say that for our commission, that it's important for visitors to sit on the outside and be invited to the table when it's their turn to talk. After they're done, they can go back to the outside. We can ask them questions of clarification, but we won't get into the discussion while they're sitting at the table. And, if I would say that if nobody else is there and the agenda is not packed, when we're discussing cutting transit, we might have a lot of people here, but if most of the time we don't, and then I would say, well, how much do you want to say? I can waive the 3-minute limit, but we always have that limit, and we waive it explicitly and the questions of clarification that commissioners have for the person who's testifying don't count against their limit.
Yeah, I think it's best I wish it was more enforced in some committees, because if there's an extensive back and forth, that should be an agenda item. Because it can get too detailed and then it's just not what public comments is intended for. And I wish more people reached out to chairs, because there's always a possibility of getting it on the agenda for a comment and having a member of the community present something for discussion. And people can do that, as provided the chair was interested in adding it to the agenda. But yeah, I do think we get into really dangerous territory with having a deep discussion about something that's not agended, and that, yeah.
Just for clarity, it does say, in an effort to be consistent with the city council, members of the public should be afforded 3 minutes to provide their testimony.
Yeah, you don't want to cut them off after 30 seconds, because we don't want to hear what you have to say.
No, but I'm just saying, that's the official guidance, is that we should no longer be having those open dialogues.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really give you, it doesn't explicitly state that we've got any leeway with it either.
And this is all applying to public comment.
Correct.
So for example, if we have Colleen here to tell us about the high injury network,
This is not for the
that
presenters.
is, she doesn't get a 3-minute limit. She is an invited speaker, and likewise, when I talked to the Park Commission about the Fitchburg Greenway system, I had a PowerPoint, they gave me the time to cover that.
Presenters are different from
Yeah.
just general members of the public. You're on the agenda as a specific topic.
It's the agenda item is, I think it's for open meeting laws, like, it has to be agended if it's something.
I thought the section on cross-commission appointments was very interesting, since we are the recipient of the most of them. Any other things that you want to highlight, Ross?
No, I just hope everybody has a chance to read that, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I think other interesting things from a government-wide thing, the variety of, so for example, Plan and Board of Public Works are covered by state statutes, so there's a certain, so they deviate from our usual model. Committees are different from commissions. Commissions report to the council and committees report to a commission. So, and some of the chairs are appointed in different ways, and I thought that was interesting, because I had never seen that all consolidated in one place. You have to read a lot of ordinance to get that much information summarized. So there'll be an ordinance change for a bicycle and pedestrian committee. Ross?
I believe that would be how it would have to be handled, but I'm not really involved in that change, but that'll happen in April with
She'll be good.
new appointments.
I'll share that when I was still in the council and I was running for mayor, and we were getting ready to apply for bicycle-friendly community in 2015, I found a document called Best Practices for Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committees on the League of American Bicyclists website. And the two big takeaways from that are that you want separate official committees and outside advisory groups, nonprofits that don't have to worry about open meetings laws and things like that. And on this side, city bodies that council can refer things to, that they know that the mayor appointed the members, that kind of thing. And then the other thing, which is not being followed here despite my suggestion, is that you should have a separate bicycle and pedestrian committee. Like snowmobiles and water skiing, bicycling has an industry. And as a result, there is much more advocacy out there for bicycling than there is for pedestrians. And so in a bicycle and pedestrian committee, a lot of the talk gets about bicycling and the pedestrians get short shift. And so what I suggested the mayor do is have a pedestrian committee and a bicycle committee, have them meet the same night back to back and the same staff contact. And then you wouldn't have any more staff involvement. You'd have 2 sets of minutes, but they wouldn't be as long. And then you would guarantee the airtime that you needed to talk about pedestrian matters. And pedestrians matters, there's a lot of people that bike for transportation. There's not so many people that walk for transportation. With the
right neighborhood design, there could be.
There could be, but certainly not long distance walking. And then, so it's really more of a land use thing than
Yes.
But the main advocates for walking are generally parents of school-age kids, and advocates for the disabled, and advocates for seniors and seniors themselves. And but you get a lot more sources of bicycle advocacy. So I will be interested to see how it works. And if that turns out to be a long-term problem, that committee mostly talks about bikes and not so much about walking.
Yeah, I understand there was a fair amount of discussion. Chad mentioned, even the possibility of combining it all under TTC. I had asked specifically, should it be bikes and pedestrians or should it be the active travel committee and because then you've got people in wheelchairs and scooters and whatever else besides just bikes and walking.
I think the main disadvantage of the current arrangement is that over the next 3 years doing appointments, you're going to be taking bicyclists off the committee and adding people who advocate for walking. And I think that the more voices for walking and biking on 2 separate committees would be better. But we'll see how it works out, because the mayor has clearly made her decision along with the city administrator, so. Anything else on the staff contact committee commission guide? Thanks for bringing that to us, Ross. I have
Of course.
I have bus rapid transit design for a future agenda item. Is there anything else that people feel like you want to talk about your near miss, for example?
Well,
As a future agenda.
yeah, I mean, we can certainly talk about, we can dive in on one or more of these 28 countermeasures and, I can give an anecdote / single data point. I also, after this last snowmageddon, or whatever we want to call it, some of the paths were in pretty bad shape for an extended period of time after the roads were completely clear.
Mhm.
And that's,
Were they paths that we have jurisdiction on?
well, yeah, that's a good question.
So what we noticed, just like people driving from Madison to Fitchburg, say, oh, I'm finally to Fitchburg where they plow the roads. Madison plows its paths, Fitchburg plows its paths, but
The DNR has volunteers who may
DNR
get around to it.
is the Military Ridge and the Badger, and Dane County Parks does the Cap City. And I would say, oh, by the way, we had 60 bicyclists come through our commuter station on Tuesday morning from 7 to 9 a.m. at the roundabout. So that was our best turnout ever, probably due to the early spring. But I would say the topic of conversation was plowing with ice and snow control on the Badger and the Military Ridge, because they love the fact that the Cannonball and the Southwest Path are always done, and the others not so much. So I think that probably a good thing to do sometime this summer is to talk to the DNR and talk to the Dane County Parks, find out what their plans are for next winter. But we have a map of all the paths and sidewalks that the city takes care of, and personnel assigned to them when it stops snowing, they go out and do it. So what was the nature of the problem you observed?
And I think some of it is the fact that private entities are responsible for clearing, like the multi-use path running from Fish Hatchery Road to Research Park on the south side of Sherrill Drive. That was completely snow covered, and you could barely get up off of the street because the plow had come and pushed snow onto the apron there.
Was it just the curb ramp, or was the whole path?
The entire path. The curb ramp was definitely the worst part. There was,
So that's a city one, and it should be on the plow routes.
Oh, is that right? I showed the picture.
I do just want to.
It wasn't. It was private.
Go ahead, Ross.
I do just want to interject. I kind of feel like this is getting into
It is.
a discussion item that maybe should be agendaed at a future meeting.
Ice and snow control.
Thanks, Ross.
It's good to know that Ross has read the manual.
That was a test and you passed. Congratulations.
We will meet again on any other future agenda items. Okay. We will meet again on March 14th at 6:30.
Pi Day.
Pi Day, yes, 314. Can we meet at 4 o'clock? That'd be 1416. No, we'll meet at 6:30. And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
So Gabrielle and Micah, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. So we will see you. Thank you all for your participation, for doing all that reading.